Hey, what do you know? This is Melvin here, and today we are going to be talking about what to do when you make a mistake. Well, there was a mistake made um, before I go live here. For some reason, the HDMI cable it's not working. So, well, it's one of those things. In any case, how is everyone doing? I hope everyone is keeping well. Today is Friday, and we coming to the end of October pretty soon, and of course in November is going to be a very very special month, especially the first week of November. If you do know why it is very very special, leave a comment in the chat. All right, so today we're going to be talking about what to do when you make a mistake. So first and foremost, what is a mistake? Well, there are various ways of looking at it, but my definition of what a mistake is has definitely evolved over the years. First, I see that there is a it's a binary thing, right? It's whether it's right or it's wrong. Well, many things in life aren't exactly so black and white. There are many gray areas. And so to say that, there is only one definitive way in order to achieve or accomplish a particular goal, that it's quite ridiculous. So in the past, I only think about a mistake. It's because you're supposed to do it in a particular way and you do not do it. And so that's why it is a mistake. But over the years, I kind of learned that, when it comes down to the truth, in fact, many things in our life are not absolute truth. So, as an example, you should, or at least the narrative here is that you should own your own housing, you should own your own car, you should own a lot of things. And that is the narrative that was given to us. And in fact, there are a lot of external agents who would also reinforce that thinking itself. The external agents would be people like your relatives, people like your family, people like real estate agents, for example. So they kind of tell you that the at the end of the day, you want to be able to own a property, and that should be the way to go because property prices are just going to go up. While that is true, I think that may fall into the narrative of what other people think it's necessary or it's correct, but I took a little bit of time to rethink that narrative itself. So as I evolve, the definition has also evolved itself. So now it's no longer just black and white. It really depends on circumstance. It really depends on the context of what's happening in your life that will make this thing whether it's correct or it's not correct, right? And so in a situation, um you know s- under certain circumstances, that decision may be the best decision. However, when you look at that decision later on, you may realize that actually you made a mistake. Now, the question is that really a mistake? Or is it on hindsight you realize that, oh, I should not have done that? And what I typically do these days is that, in the past, I would like kind of beat myself up. But now what I do, it's, I just take it as okay, that was a decision that was made in the past. And, as long as I am okay, I didn't, how would I say that? I'm still here, I'm still alive, I'm still breathing. As long as that is the case, it's okay, right? It's okay. Because during that time itself, that's how we see certain thing, and over time we may change our perspective. So let's come to the part where we talked about what to do when you make a mistake. Now, I mean, I'd like to ask you, like, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you have ever made, right? Um, I mean, you will look at the mistake on hindsight, of course. And if so, what is the biggest mistake that you have ever made? If you can just leave a comment, leave your answer in the comment below, right? Whether you're watching it live or you are watching this as a replay, do know that I actually go back and look at the comments itself. So make sure you leave me a comment, right? So what are some of the mistakes that you made? Well, for me, when I look back itself, I do not think that many of the the decisions that I've made was a mistake. I mean, I didn't see it that way. That, oh, I shouldn't have done that because that is a mistake. Um, what I tend to see is I would ask myself, why do I have that perspective, right? So as some of you might know, I became a CEO of a early stage.com, and that was back in the year 2000. And and during that time itself, when it was arguably one of the darkest day, um, I kind of at the point in time I kind of was beating myself up because I was badly damaged, and I went through a lot during that time itself. And so, I always thought that that was a mistake. But now if you ask me, I wouldn't trade that for anything else, because I believe that during that point in time, it was when I learned most. And that really helped me grow, both professionally as well as personally, a great deal. And so I wouldn't say that that was a mistake to leave my really cushy job and join something that it's highly uncertain. But when I look back at that so-called mistake itself, why is it that I would not trade that for anything else? So it comes down to this, right? So what happens when you make a mistake? Now you need to first and foremost ask yourself, why did you make that decision, right? So why did you make that decision? Now this is a time for you to really be very clear in terms of what were the circumstance that led you to make that decision itself. And as you're going through the process of asking yourself, why did you make the decision? Leave judgment at the door. So what I mean by that is, you do not beat yourself up. You do not blame yourself. You are just objectively looking at, why did I make that decision, right? And there is no right or wrong. There is no judgment. So do not judge. So for me, for example, when I made the decision to jump from my cushy job to a early stage startup, the motivation behind that was money. And I was thinking that, I could become unbelievably rich before I reached 30 itself. Well, obviously God has some other plans. So that that was why I made why I made the decision. And so that's the first step. The second step, it's really to ask yourself now, what what were your perspective at the point in time? And so here is where we can introduce two types of perspective. And that is something that I read from the book called Mental Models, the series two. And so, what exactly is the perspective that you had at a point in time, right? And so there are two perspectives. One is a physical perspective. I'll get into that in a minute. The other one is a conceptual perspective. So a physical perspective, it's the simplest way to think about it is that, you if you stay in an apartment block, and everyone who stay above and below you, essentially everyone is getting the same view, right? It's looking in the same direction, and you're seeing just about the same thing. However, here's if you go to your neighbor who stays at the highest floor and you go to the neighbor who stays at the lowest floor, arguably, you know I mean, inevitably their view is going to be different. And so that's what we call a physical view. So at that point in time when you make that decision, what was your physical point of view, right? What was your physical point of view? For me, it was really, the point of view was that, well, I had nothing to lose much. It turns out, yes, that was true. I had nothing to lose. If I were to ever need to, I mean, if this thing doesn't work out, I can always go back and look for a job. It wasn't like, um, that's the end of me, because at the point in time I was employed as a CEO. I wasn't, there wasn't any money that I had to put into the company itself, right? So what was the physical perspective? And this one is easy. Now the other one is, what is the conceptual perspective? Now conceptual perspective is a little, difficult to, for some people. So conceptual perspective essentially talks about the belief systems, right? It talks about the belief systems, and to a certain extent the identity. So what were your belief at that point in time, and what was your identity? So for me, the belief at the point in time was that, yes, money, it's the most important thing. And that's what I want to work towards, right? Because I mean, I was dreaming of the cars, the houses, and the whole stuff itself. Now, so that was a belief. Once again, as you're going through this process itself, do not judge. Do not say that, well, that sounds kind of sleazy. It is what it is, so leave it as that, right? So I was at the point in time, the belief was really, I want to make as much money as I can. And the belief was also that, you know I should be, um I want to cash in on this phenomenon that we were going through, and I really want to be part of that process itself. So, it was both cool. At the same time, it was something that I felt that would give me that exposure, and it certainly did, right? So here is that you want to find out, like, what exactly are the beliefs, right? So once you have established step one, what was the decision you made? W- w- what was the decision you made? And then step two is look at the perspective. So the perspective itself, there, or the physical perspective, as well as the um, conceptual perspective. So once you've done that, the next thing is to come into part three. And so in part three itself really is to ask yourself, based on those perspective, um, what part of it still holds true, right? So, and the reason is because, there are, from the physical perspective, there are the things that you do, right? And the conceptual perspective, there are things that you believe. And so, the things that you do and the things that you believe must be in sync. Otherwise, you can do something that it's not in sync with your belief. But what's going to happen is that is not going to be sustainable. So, as a great example, it's the reason why lottery ticket winners usually end up broke. Because the thing was that, they were given all this money, but what didn't change was their belief. And what didn't change was their mindset itself, their mental model, right? And so without that mental model and that belief, no matter how much money you give them, they're just going to squander it all. So the key behind this is really, it's not just looking at the behaviors, but also looking at the beliefs itself. So now really is to ask yourself, what can you do right now to rectify that mistake, right? And this thing that you need to do, does it align to your belief? And for me, this is really the struggle, because sometimes I have identified the behaviors that must be done, but I had to struggle with it not being aligned to my beliefs itself. And so that it's still currently my biggest struggle, but I would say that I'm winning it, and I'm definitely being able to uh, do something about that, right? So if you have a different strategy, if you have a different way of dealing with mistakes, or to be able to overcome the mistakes, or to you know after you have realized that decision that you make, it's a mistake, what do you do after that? That's something that I like to know. Okay, with that, thank you so much for watching. If this video has been useful, please give me a thumbs up. It means the world to me. Plus, it also help other people find the video. This, and secondly, is that if you are interested in this whole process of building this 1 person 1 million or digital business, then definitely you want to subscribe to this channel. With that said, I thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye bye.